Story 1. It all began with a feeling of pure desperation. I was 26, stuck in a crumbling one-bedroom apartment above a pawn shop in Kent, Ohio. The radiators would hiss like angry cats, and the windows leaked a draft every time the wind blew. I had been laid off from my full-time dispatching job at a logistics company after they outsourced to some place in Arizona. It wasn't personal, just numbers. It always is. For long months, I scraped by doing odd jobs, temp work, pet sitting, selling random junk on Facebook Marketplace. I must have applied to 100 places: grocery stores, office jobs, overnight stocking gigs. Nothing stuck. Most never even sent a rejection, just silence. And when you're broke, that silence starts to feel like the world telling you that you don't matter anymore. One cold night in early November, I sat at my cracked kitchen table, my laptop glowing blue in the dark room, desperately Googling ways to make extra money fast. I found a forum where people shared their side hustles. One user, broke in Boston, swore by secret shopping, said it was easy money and almost fun. I clicked his link, which took me to a Craigslist ad, seeking mystery shoppers in Ohio. Flexible hours, must have email and transportation. Payouts $35 to $50 per shop. No upfront cost. Immediate openings. It sounded incredibly scammy, but I was completely out of options. I sent the email. Within an hour, I got a reply from a woman named Denise Weston using a Gmail account. She sounded legit, using corporate language, and attached a basic PDF with instructions and a form for my contact info, PayPal, email, and availability. I filled it out and sent it back. The very next morning, she emailed me my first assignment. I was to evaluate an employee at Mayfair Market, a local grocery store chain I knew well. This particular location was about 15 minutes away in a quieter suburb. The instructions were simple. Enter the store between 6 o'clock and 8 p.m. Observe the employee working in aisle for the canned goods. Ask for help finding canned tuna and then complete the customer interaction checklist. She emphasized, you must remain anonymous. Do not reveal you are a secret shopper. Submit the report within 2 hours for payment. Honestly, it seemed totally doable. I'd been on the other side of this before, working retail in high school. We used to whisper about secret shoppers like they were urban legends, employees competing over who had the best greeting and eye contact routine. At 6:17 p.m., I walked into Mayfair Market wearing a worn black hoodie, taking shallow breaths to calm my nerves like I was going undercover. The store smelled of floor cleaner and overripe produce. I browsed the aisles casually to avoid drawing any attention. Aisle 4 was quiet. The only employee was a young guy, maybe 24 or 25, lean with light brown hair and hollow cheeks. His red vest had the name Miles in faded embroidery. He was silently shelving cans with that dead-eyed stare I remembered from my own late shifts. I paused by the end cap, pretending to read a coupon, then walked up to him. Hey, sorry to bug you. Could you help me find the canned tuna? He didn't even look up. Middle of the aisle, left side, he said flatly, still stocking. No eye contact, no greeting, no offer to show me, just a vague hand wave. Okay. Thanks, I said, lingering, hoping he might recover the interaction with some parting remark. He didn't. I finally added, have a good night, just to end it. He glanced up then, his eyes dull and a little bloodshot. You too, he muttered, then just stared. I typed Miles into my phone notes and turned to leave, but as I moved down the next aisle, I got that feeling. The kind you get when you're walking alone at night and sense someone behind you. I glanced back. He was watching me from the edge of the aisle. I kept moving. In every aisle I visited, I noticed him again, sometimes near the produce, sometimes further back by the dairy, not stocking, just standing there, watching. By the time I reached the checkout, I was sweating under my hoodie. The cashier, a bubbly college kid named Amber, passed her secret shopper check easily with a greeting, eye contact, and a chipper. Enjoy your night. I smiled stiffly, nodded. and got out of there. I hurried to my car, started the engine, and sat there with the dome light on, typing out my report before I forgot the details. I noted that Miles failed the interaction, didn't greet or offer help, and made minimal eye contact. As I typed, a shadow moved across my windshield. I froze. It was him, Miles, storming across the parking lot with heavy, angry strides. He didn't look directly at my car, but he passed close by, heading toward an old black sedan parked 3 spaces over. He got in and peeled out of the lot so fast his tires chirped. I stared after him for a long time, a hard knot in my throat. Then I drove home. By the next morning, I had a $40 PayPal deposit and another assignment in my inbox. I tried to move on. 3 nights later, I was at my boyfriend Jesse's place across town. We were eating Chinese food on his couch, watching reruns of Whose Line Is It Anyway? His dog, Mako, was asleep at our feet, twitching in a dream. Around 11:40 p.m. there was a knock at the door. No, not a knock, a slam, then another and another. Jesse paused the TV. We stared at each other. Mako sprang up and growled low. "Who the hell is that?" Jesse stood and walked to the window. I followed. We peeked through the blinds and my stomach dropped. It was Miles. Same hoodie, same haunted eyes, but worse, like he hadn't slept in days. He was pacing on the porch, muttering, then slamming his fists against the door again. I stumbled back. Jesse opened the storm door window. "Hey man, you need to get out of here now." Miles didn't budge. He just slammed the door again and shouted, "I know what you did. You ruined everything." "What the hell is he talking about?" Jesse whispered. I didn't answer. My mouth was dry. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it was echoing in my arms. "I told you I was already on my last chance," Miles bellowed. "And you come in there asking for _tuna like you're better than me." Jesse pulled me behind him and reached for his phone. I nodded frantically. "Called the cops." Miles kept shouting, his voice cracking. "You cost me my job. You got me fired. You think you can just come into my store and ruin my life. You think you're safe. There's always an eye for an eye." He began slamming his whole body against the door. The wood cracked. Mako barked wildly, tail down, ears flattened. I grabbed Jesse's arm. He had to have followed me that night. There's no other way he could know where I am. Jesse whispered, holding the phone to his ear. The dispatcher stayed on the line. Less than 2 minutes later, red and blue lights bounced off the walls. When the cops pulled up, Miles made a run for it, but not before one officer tackled him in the yard. Jesse and I stood frozen, watching from the window as they cuffed him. Mako's growls turned to whines. As they patted him down, one of the officers pulled a folding knife from his waistband. That's when I started shaking uncontrollably. In the days that followed, the detective on the case told me a little more. Miles, real name Brandon Miles Henley, had been at Mayfair for almost 2 years. He had a string of write-ups and was already on probation for failing a previous secret shopper report. The night I showed up, his girlfriend had broken up with him. His car had just failed inspection. He was behind on rent. He wasn't just having a bad day. He was on the brink. My report had cost him his job. That much was confirmed. But the part I still can't get past is this. I never used my real name on the shopper form. The email I used was a burner account with no ties to my real life. So how did he find me? How did he know I was the secret shopper? How did he know Jesse's address? One theory is the store had cameras. Maybe he watched them afterward and saw me getting in my car. Maybe he followed me and I never noticed. Maybe he wrote down my plate and found someone who knew how to track it. I don't know. What I do know is I never secret shopped again. I turned down every assignment after that. I eventually found a steady job at a call center and slowly tried to forget the whole thing. Jesse installed a camera above his door. We moved a few months later, just in case. But sometimes, when I'm in a store and I see someone shelving cans, I still wonder, do they know? Are they watching? And is there a line between helping corporations enforce meaningless standards and destroying someone's last thread of hope? Because I crossed it, and someone almost died because of it. Story 2. I never thought I'd take a job from Craigslist. It wasn't that I was too good for it. I'd just heard too many horror stories. Sketchy meets, no-shows, scams, or worse. But sometimes life squeezes you until all the safe options are gone. It started 3 weeks after I lost my full-time gig at the front desk of a dental clinic. They downsized. I'd been living alone in a studio apartment in East Maroa, scraping by with savings and odd gigs. The clock on my rent was ticking loudly. When I got desperate enough, I messaged my friend Emily, who always had a side hustle or 3 going. She mentioned she'd done babysitting through Craigslist before. Just vet them hard, she'd said. Don't go in blind. Ask questions. Trust your gut. I'd babysat a lot in high school and college, and I was good at it. I figured it couldn't be that different now. It's just keeping kids safe and alive for a few hours. The first few postings I saw were either vague or shady, but then I came across one that looked normal, almost too normal. Childcare needed. Saturday evening. Hi, looking for a sitter for our 2 boys this Saturday, ages 6 and 9. From about 5:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Pretty laid-back household. Just need someone responsible while we go out for an anniversary dinner. Pay is $120 for the evening. Message. For address details, thanks. Chloe M. Something about the post felt safe. Simple. The tone was casual. The rate was generous, but not suspiciously so. I replied. Chloe messaged me back an hour later with the address and a brief note. Thanks so much for replying. My husband and I will leave just after 5:30. Boys are Isaac and Dylan. Super easy. They've got dinner already. Just TV, games, maybe reading before bed. Should be a quiet night. We exchanged a few more messages. She seemed normal, even friendly. Signing off with a smiley face. It almost made me feel silly for being so cautious. Still, I did my due diligence. I googled the address, 1585 Brookfield Lane. It was in a cul-de-sac just outside town, near some older neighborhoods, but not far enough to raise any alarms. I messaged Emily all the details just in case. Text me when you get there, she said, and if anything feels off, leave. It was a dry Saturday when I pulled up the cracked driveway at 5:18 p.m. The house was modest. A single story with flaking blue paint and overgrown shrubs. A wind chime clinked under the porch awning. The porch light was already on, even though the sun was still up. Something about it gave me a weird pinch in my chestnut fear. Just a tightness. I knocked. No answer. I tried again, this time hearing. Shuffling behind the door. When it finally opened, a man stood there, late 50s, maybe 60, tall, skinny, with thinning gray hair and a long patchy beard. He wore a t-shirt with faded letters and jeans with paint stains. He squinted at me like he couldn't see well. You, the babysitter? Yeah, I said. Chloe messaged me, said to be here at 5:30. Right, he said, scratching his head. She just ran out with the boys for snacks or something. You can come on in though, she'll be back in 5. The way he looked at me made my spine tighten, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I stepped inside. The house smelled like dust and old cooking oil. The front room was cluttered with boxes, stacks of newspaper, and a single recliner. The air was thick and stale. Sorry for the mess, he said, closing the door behind me. The lock clicked. We're doing some reorganizing. No worries, I lied. He gestured down a narrow hallway. Living room's back there. TV, couch. You can wait there. As I walked, I scanned the place. No toys, no kids' drawings, no backpacks. No photos of children, just muted beige walls, framed generic art, and dust. I sat down on a worn brown couch. My phone buzzed. Emily, you good? I typed back. Weird vibe, but okay so far. Chloe, not here yet, just the husband. He passed by the hallway again, muttering something under his breath. He was pacing. Every now and then he'd peek into the living room and say something like, "She should have been back by now," or "Sorry about this. Just bad timing." The whole thing started to feel like a bad performance. At 5:45, I stood up. "I think I might just head out," I said, trying to sound casual. He looked alarmed. Wait, no, she's probably downstairs. I didn't hear the front door earlier, so maybe she came in through the side." He pointed to a door I hadn't noticed, one tucked in the kitchen, half hidden behind a curtain. "She goes down there sometimes with the boys, craft stuff, art. She's probably waiting for you." The house had gone very quiet. I walked to the door and opened it. The basement was pitch black. A cold, earthy smell hit my nose. Mold, dust, and something metallic, like rust. I stood frozen. "Go on," he said, his voice too cheerful. "They're probably just setting up." I didn't move. My stomach flipped. "Actually, I just got a text. I think my ride's here early. I got to go. I'm so sorry. Maybe we can reschedule." I turned and bolted for the front door, locked. He was still behind me. "Hang on a sec," he said, his voice turning dry. "You haven't even met the kids." I fumbled with the deadbolt, my heart pounding. Click, it opened. I didn't look back. I flew down the porch steps, across the lawn to my car. My hands shook as I unlocked it. Behind me, I heard him yelling something, a name, a phrase. It didn't matter. I slammed the door shut and tore out of the driveway. My rearview mirror showed him standing in the front yard, hands in fists. I drove until I hit a grocery store parking lot 10 minutes away, parked, cried, and called Emily. She picked up on the first ring. "What happened?" I told her everything. "Call the cops," she said now. The dispatcher sounded calm as I described the house, the man, the fake babysitting setup. She asked for the address and thanked me for reporting it. An officer called me 2 hours later for a follow-up. I told him everything again. He said they'd check it out. That was the end of it, at least officially. 2 weeks passed. I tried not to think about it. I got a temporary job at a pet supply store and threw myself into normal routines. Then one evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. "Hi there, we saw your babysitting profile online. We have 2 boys, ages 6 and 9, and need a sitter this Saturday evening. $124 the night. Let us know if you're available. Chloe M." Same phrasing, same pay, different number. There was no way to trace it. I'd never even made a public profile. I blocked the number. 2 days later, another message came from a different number again. "Hey, found your ad. Looking for a sitter near Brookfield area. 2 boys, easy night. Let us know if you're free. Tom and Chloe." The next day, I changed my phone number. I moved 3 months later, changed cities, took Emily's offer to crash with her in Ridgewood until I got back on my feet. I never heard from Chloe again, but I've kept screenshots of every message, just in case. Sometimes when I'm scrolling job boards, I still see similar listings, same tone, same rate, different names, different zip codes, and I wonder how many people didn't trust their gut, how many went down those basement steps, and how many never came back up. Story 3. It started with a pretty ordinary listing. I had just decided to sell my 2006 Honda CR-V. It wasn't a luxury ride, but it was reliable, had a clean title, no major mechanical issues, and still had decent life left even with 200,000 miles on it. The paint was a little faded on the hood, and the AC sometimes made a weird rattling noise when it kicked on, but nothing major. I'd taken care of it for years, oil changes, tire rotations, brake pads, always on schedule. I'd just upgraded to a newer car a few weeks before and didn't want the old one sitting around collecting dust, so I figured I'd list it on Craigslist. That's where I'd bought it years ago, and I'd had mostly good experiences using the site before. People always say it's sketchy, but if you're cautious, it's fine, or so I thought. I took about 10 pictures of the interior, exterior, odometer, and even under the hood. Then I wrote up a simple but honest ad. I priced it reasonably at $2,800. Nothing suspicious, nothing too cheap, just fair. The ad went up on a Thursday afternoon. Crickets for the rest of the day. But the next morning around 10:30, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey, saw your ad for the CRV. My name's Tony. I've been looking for one of these. Still available?" I replied. "Yep, still have it. Want to come take a look?" He responded almost immediately. "Yes, I can come by tomorrow night after work around 8:30 or 9. That okay?" I paused for a second. It wasn't unusual for people to come late, especially if they worked odd shifts. Still, something about a stranger coming that late made me hesitate, but I lived in a decent-sized apartment complex on the edge of West Grove, a quiet suburb. My car was already parked in the open lot. He wouldn't even have to come near my apartment door. I replied, "That's fine, just meet me in the parking lot. I'll be by the car." "Cool, see you then," he texted back. Nothing about it raised red flags at the time. The next day, I got the car cleaned up inside, vacuumed, wiped everything down, cleared my stuff out of the glove box and sent a console. Around 8:15, I put on a hoodie and went downstairs to wait by the car. It was dark, but not late enough to feel creepy. There were still people walking their dogs or coming home from work. I stood near my CRV, casually scrolling on my phone while glancing at every car that pulled in. At 8:58 on the dot, a black Dodge Charger with tinted windows pulled into the lot. It rolled slowly past me before stopping in a visitor spot 3 spaces away. The driver's door opened and a tall man stepped out. He looked to be in his mid-30s, maybe a little older, bald, muscular, with lots of tattoos covering his forearms. He wore a black Carhartt jacket and dark jeans. He had this sort of intense energy, like he was always ready to argue even when he wasn't saying anything. But he smiled as he walked over. "You selling the CRV?" he asked, his voice a little deeper than I expected. "Yeah," I said, forcing a polite smile. "You must be Tony." "Yep," he said, walking around the car to look at the body. "Looks clean, been driving it a lot, mostly just to and from work. It's been solid for years, no leaks, no overheating. I had the timing belt done at 180,000. Got paperwork if you want." He nodded, pulling out a small flashlight to inspect. "The tires, can I check under the hood?" "Sure," I said, popping it open. We went through the usual motions. He asked a few normal questions. He didn't seem like a car guy, but he knew enough to pass for someone interested. "Mind if I take it for a quick spin?" he asked. "I'll need to come with you," I said automatically. "Just company policy." I tried to laugh, but he didn't. Tony grinned, but there was no warmth behind it. "No problem." We got in. I directed him around the block, then down the main road where he tested the acceleration. It wasn't a long drive, maybe 10 minutes, but it felt longer in the silence. He didn't talk much, just stared ahead with a clenched jaw. "I like it," he said finally. "Feels solid." When we got back, he pulled into the same parking spot as before. I stepped out, hopeful. "So, what do you think?" I asked. He looked at me for a beat. "Yeah, I'll think about it," he said, his tone flat. I blinked. "Oh, okay, sure." And then, casually, he asked, "Hey, mind if I use your bathroom real quick before I go?" That moment froze in time. It was like a needle drop in a movie. Every instinct in me tightened at once. Yeah, I'd rather not," I said, keeping my tone even. "Nothing personal. I just don't let strangers into my place." Tony didn't respond at first. He just looked at me hard. His smile faded. There was an awkward silence. Then he nodded slowly. "All right, no worries." I gave a small wave and turned to walk away. I didn't head to the nearest side door like I normally would. Instead, I circled the building to the front entrance, just in case. When I reached the front doors, I looked back. No one was behind me. Relieved, I headed inside. The entryway was quiet. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. When the doors opened, I stepped in, hit 3, and leaned back against the wall. It took less than 30 seconds to reach my floor. When I stepped out, I turned left toward my apartment and stopped. At the far end of the hallway, the door to the stairwell opened. Tony stepped through. At first I thought no. I hoped it was just someone who looked like him, but I knew it wasn't. It was him. Same jacket, same walk, same unreadable stare. My blood went ice cold. I didn't say anything. I just turned around and walked fast in the opposite direction. I tried not to run, but then I heard it. Footsteps. Fast ones. Heavy behind me. I did run then. Full sprint to the other end of the hallway. I didn't even think. I shoved open the stairwell door and bolted down the stairs, my heart hammering against my chest. I could hear him behind me, closer than I wanted, down to flights, then into the underground garage. The echo of our footsteps rang through the concrete. My breath burned. I didn't head to my car. I didn't know if I had time to unlock it. Instead, I ran to the next stairwell, slammed the door behind me, and bounded up to the ground floor. When I burst through the exit door on the side of the building, cold air hit my face. I ran across the lot to my CRV. My hand shaking, I unlocked it, jumped in, locked the doors, and turned the key. The engine started. I peeled out of the lot and called 911. The dispatcher kept me on the line as I circled the nearby blocks. I explained what happened, described Tony, his car, everything. 5 minutes later, I saw flashing lights back at the complex. I returned, slowly, and parked on the street. Tony's Charger was still there. Officers found him trying to force open the patio door of a first-floor apartment. He had no tools, no friends, no money on him, no actual interest in buying a car. That night, I realized how close I'd come to letting something terrible happen. He hadn't planned to buy anything. That car ad was just bait. He wanted an address, a face, and a window of time. I deleted the Craigslist ad that night, never used the site again. And now, whenever I sell anything online, I meet people in the police department parking lot, no exceptions. Story 4. I used to work the night shift at a small roadside hotel just off the highway. It wasn't glamorous, more like stale coffee, flickering lobby lights, and the occasional drunk guest arguing about a checkout fee, but it paid the rent and let me save a little. The good thing about that shift was the quiet after midnight. Aside from the odd check-in, I was mostly left alone behind the front desk. I'd spend those slow hours scrolling Craigslist, mostly for fun, checking the free section or electronics listings. People gave away the weirdest stuff: broken treadmills, entire dining sets, baby clothes, even working TVs from folks moving cross-country. In a rush at the time, my TV had just died, a hand-me-down Toshiba that finally gave up after years of abuse. Watching Netflix on my laptop was starting to get old. I wasn't looking for anything fancy, just something that worked. One night around 2 a.m., halfway through a gas station sandwich and a lukewarm cup of coffee, I came across a listing, 50 in LG flat screen, lightly used. The photos weren't generic. This wasn't some sketchy reseller. The TV was sitting on a cheap stand in a dim, cluttered living room. A couple of moving boxes were stacked nearby. It looked legit, like someone genuinely getting rid of stuff. $120 wasn't suspiciously cheap, just cheap enough for someone trying to get rid of it quickly. The ad had only been up for 28 minutes. I sent a short message: "Hi, I'm interested in the TV, still available?" Then I went back to half watching the hotel security cams and checking in a trucker who smelled like diesel and regret. An hour later I got a reply: "Hey, this is Kara, from Craigslist, yes, still available. You can come by tomorrow after 6 o'clock if that works." Her name wasn't on the listing, but that wasn't unusual. I texted back, "7 works for me. What's the address?" She sent it, a place on Willow Terrace Drive, a quiet neighborhood about 10 minutes from my apartment. One of those older parts of town with big lawns and tired one-story houses. I looked it up on maps, seemed safe enough. "Cool, see you then." I texted back. The next day after my shift, I stopped at an ATM and pulled out $140 just to cover any weird change situations. It was still light out when I pulled into the neighborhood. Birds chirped, kids rode bikes, a guy across the street was mowing his lawn. The address Kara gave me was a beige house with a sagging porch and slightly overgrown grass. Not sketchy, just neglected. A place someone's aunt might have owned for decades. I parked along the curb, stuffed the cash in my jacket pocket, and walked up to the door. Before I could knock, it opened. A woman stood there, average height, dark hair in a messy bun, a sweatshirt with a faded college logo, and leggings. Early 30s maybe. "Hey, you must be Alex," she said. "That's me," I nodded. "Here for the TV. I'm Kara. Come on in. Sorry about the mess. We're kind of between things right now." The inside matched the outside. Sparse, dim, a few boxes near. The wall furniture halfway moved or packed. The only light was a small lamp in the corner. "No worries," I said casually. "Looks like how my place did before I moved in," she chuckled. It sounded tight, like she didn't actually find it funny. "It's back in the bedroom," she said, gesturing down a hallway. "Right this way." Something felt a little off. Maybe it was how quiet it was. No background noise, no TV, no fan, not even the faint hum of a fridge. But I followed her anyway. The hallway was narrow with faint footprints in the carpet. She stopped at the last door on the right. "Right in here," she said, and opened it. I stepped inside and stopped cold. There was no TV. The room was empty. No bed, no boxes, no furniture. Just a blank room with dusty blinds drawn shut. Then the door shut behind me, locked. I turned instantly and twisted the knob. It rattled but wouldn't open. "Kara," I called out. No answer. "What the hell is this?" I pounded on the door. "Open up." Silence. I checked my phone. No signal. Not even one bar. I took a shaky breath, the kind your body takes when your brain realizes something is really wrong. I pressed my ear to the door and listened. Voices muffled. Two of them, Kara and a man. I hadn't heard him until now. "Let me out," I yelled. "I'm calling the cops." No reply. I crossed to the window, tried the latch. It was brittle, locked tight, barely moved. Okay. Panic was starting to bubble up. I paced, looked around for something, anything I could use, but the room was bare. I went back to the door and pounded harder, shouted louder. Still nothing. Then I had an idea. I opened my phone, found the alarm app, cranked the volume, and hit the loudest siren it had. I tossed the phone into the far corner and pressed my back against the wall beside the door. I waited. Footsteps. Heavy. Rushing. The door creaked open. A man stepped in. Tall, stocky, wearing a black hoodie and scuffed jeans. His eyes went straight to the phone, clearly trying to shut off the noise. That was my window. I lunged, slammed into him with everything I had. His shoulder clipped mine, but I was through before he could grab me. The hallway was a blur. Kara stepped out from the living room, eyes wide. She reached for me. I ducked, nearly slipping over a box. I didn't stop. Out the door, across the porch, keys already in my hand. I hit unlock as I ran, yanked open the car door, threw myself in, slammed it shut, locked it, and started the engine. They were on the porch by then. I didn't look back. I peeled out, tires screeching. I didn't stop until I hit a gas station, 3 blocks away. I ran inside and told the cashier, "Call the cops, please. Someone just tried to trap me." The police took my statement. I gave them Kara's number, the address, the ad info. When they drove me back to the house, it was empty. Lights off, curtains drawn, no sign of anyone. A neighbor poked their head out and told the cops the house was supposed to be vacant. Owner was out of town on a business trip. "They've been gone all week," the neighbor said. "Nobody's supposed to be in there." The Craigslist ad was deleted. Kara's number was disconnected. My phone, still somewhere in that house, was gone too. The officer told me it wasn't the first time they'd seen setups like that. People lure you in with a sale. Sometimes it's a robbery, sometimes it's worse. They never caught Kara or the guy. I bought a used TV from a pawn shop the next week, and I never used Craigslist again. Story 5. I wasn't even looking for a car at first. My son Jake had been pestering me about getting his license and wanted something reliable to drive to his classes and part-time job. At first I brushed it off, but after weeks of him showing me listings, test scores, and practically begging me to take a trip to the DMV, I gave in. He was turning 18 in a few weeks, and I figured it'd be the perfect surprise. He had no idea I was planning anything. I didn't have a huge budget though. After some searching on all the usual sites, AutoTrader, Facebook Marketplace, Cars.com, I started to get frustrated. Everything decent was either too expensive or sold within hours. The only place I hadn't checked was Craigslist, which I'd mostly avoided because of all the horror stories. But out of desperation, I gave it a shot. To my surprise, I stumbled on a listing that almost seemed too good to be true. A 2004 Honda Accord, silver, clean interior, 68,000 miles, no accidents, and all for $3,500. The photos looked genuine. The car didn't have that overly polished, dealer touched up look. It was sitting in an unpaved driveway surrounded by trees with a slightly dusty finish. It looked real, like something a regular person would sell. The seller's name was Rick. He lived in a small town called Red Hill, about 20 minutes from me. I called him that evening. He sounded older, maybe late 50s, with a calm and polite tone. Said he was selling the car because his daughter had moved to another state and left it behind. Runs like a dream, he told me. I just had the brakes and battery replaced. No surprises. We agreed to meet the next afternoon. I told Jake I had errands to run and headed out with the cash tucked inside my jacket pocket. It was a cloudy Thursday, the sky threatening rain, and I remember how quiet the drive felt once I turned off the highway and onto a series of narrow, tree-lined roads. Red Hill was barely a dot on the map. His address led me to a long gravel driveway that wound uphill through thick brush and old oak trees. At the top sat a small single-story house with chipped paint and a sagging front porch. There was no Honda in sight, just a rusted green pickup with mismatched tires parked under a carport, but the house number matched the listing. I parked on the shoulder and walked up. The driveway crunched under my boots, and I noticed the silence. No birds, no wind, just the faint hum of my engine cooling down behind me. The front door had a knocker shaped like a lion's head, but no doorbell. I knocked once, then twice. No answer. I waited. 5 minutes went by. I knocked again, louder. Still nothing. I tried calling Rick's number, and that's when I heard the ringtone, faint and tinny, coming from inside the house. That was when something started to feel wrong. I walked over to the window beside the porch, cupping my hands to the glass. Inside it was dark. The curtains were pulled halfway, but I could make out part of the living room. There were stacks of newspapers, old furniture covered in sheets, and what looked like a stuffed animal propped up in an armchair, except it wasn't an animal. At first I thought it was some kind of mannequin. It was wearing a hoodie, slouched over in the chair with pale skin and glassy eyes that didn't look like plastic. I stepped back, my heart starting to pound. I tried telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was just a weird sculpture or a doll, but something told me not to go any closer. I walked around to the side of the house where a garage door stood half open. Inside were rows and rows of car part stores, bumpers, seats all stacked and labeled. It was too organized for a junker to clean. There was no sign of the Accord. Just as I turned to leave, I noticed another figure through the rear window of the house. This one was standing back turned, perfectly still, facing the backyard like it had been placed there. I knocked lightly on the glass, feeling a sick sense of dread. No movement. The back door creaked open slightly from the wind, revealing a dark hallway beyond. I could hear the ringtone again, faintly, the same tune echoing from deeper inside the house. Then it stopped. I took a step back. The window blinds that I had just looked through snapped shut, fast. Someone had been standing there, watching me. That's when I ran. I didn't care about the money anymore. I sprinted to my car, jumped in, locked the doors, and floored it. The gravel kicked up behind me, and I didn't stop until I hit the main road. Later that night, I checked the Craigslist ad again. It was gone. Rick's number was disconnected. I reported the incident to the police, but without a plate number, without a real name, there wasn't much they could do. They said the property had been abandoned for years. The man I spoke to, whoever he was, had been using a burner phone. Jake never found out what happened. I ended up getting him a certified used Civic from a dealership instead. He was thrilled. But every so often, when I'm driving alone at night, I think about that pale figure in the chair. The stillness of it, the perfectly clean parts in the garage, the phone ringing inside an empty house, and I wonder how many other people answered Rick's ad. I didn't stop driving until I hit the main road. My chest was tight, and my hands were shaking against the steering wheel. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting that old pickup to come roaring down the road behind me. It never did. When I got home, I locked all the doors and sat in my car for a while, just staring at my phone. I opened Craigslist again, to see if the post was still up. It was gone, completely scrubbed. No Rick, no Accord, nothing. I tried calling the number again. Disconnected. That night, I barely slept. I kept seeing the back of that figure in my mind, standing silently, staring out the door. The more I thought about it, the less certain I became that it was taxidermy. It hadn't moved, sure, but there was something too perfect about it, too. Posed, like whoever had arranged it wanted it to look lifelike. The next morning, I filed a police report. I didn't embellish, just told them I responded to a Craigslist car ad, drove to the house, and found something deeply disturbing. I left out the part about thinking